Bledsoe was arrested.
Patrick Montgomery was in court.
Jonathan Manapa will stay in federal custody.
No, I don't take responsibility at all.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. So 38-year-old New Jersey resident Christopher Quaglin repeatedly talked about war following the 2020 election. He said he, quote, might not even make it back from D.C. And Quaglin told other people that he was planning to wear full body armor and he was going to be taking a gas mask, bear spray, a medical kit, and a knife to D.C. with him. He falsely believed that a 3-inch knife was allowed at the Capitol. Totally kosher. And Quaglin posted pictures of what he was planning on taking on social media. So when someone asked Quaglin if he thought the situation would turn into a civil war, Quaglin said, quote, I'm bringing my guns, and quote, I'm going armed. And in one social media photo he shared, there was a semi-automatic looking rifle. In another post, Quaglin shared on a photo of his entire wall of weapons. He also had body armor up there. And he wrote, quote, who wants to go to D.C.? So Quaglin encouraged other people to take weapons with them. He encouraged them to take gas masks and to, quote, pick up arms and storm the Capitol. Doesn't get more clear than that. And he admitted his wife was crying about him going to D.C., but Quaglin thought that it was a worthwhile trip and that he was going to be on the, quote, front fucking line. So on January 6th, Quaglin was seen bypassing several lines of security barricades. They were clearly marked with area closed signs, and Quaglin maneuvered his way to the front of the police line. He started attacking officers almost right away. First, he started getting in their faces. He was pointing and screaming at them. Then Quaglin started pushing against one officer. He stepped away briefly to adjust his helmet, and then he charged back at the police again with his arms outstretched, and he shoved an officer. Then Quaglin reached toward and swatted at another officer several times. Then he approached a third officer, and he kept repeatedly poking that officer in the chest with his finger and yelling at him. So a short time after that, Quaglin walked down the line of police, and then he charged forward again, and he started pushing into one officer. Then he started swatting at another officer several times. He was then seen pushing against 2 other officers separately. Then he swatted at one of them, and he screamed at the officer until someone in the mob saw him so out of control that they actually pulled Quaglin back. Quaglin, though, still didn't stop. He charged back towards the police line again. He pointed his fingers in another officer's face. He was just inches away from this officer's face. Then Quaglin grabbed this officer by the neck. He tackled the officer to the ground. The officer fell backwards onto a marble staircase, by the way, so he suffered a very serious injury, and the attack caused a complete melee. It was just everybody went nuts at that point. And so other officers jumped in. They pulled Quaglin off of this officer that he knocked down on the steps, and then Trump's terrorists jumped in to get the police off of Quaglin. So it was just a shitstorm. So eventually, Quaglin was pulled off of the officer. He stood back up, and he was right back at it again. He started pushing several other officers who were trying to reestablish the police line. And when one officer bent down to pick something up off the ground, Quaglin clocked him in the back of the head with what they said looked like a gas mask. So minutes after that attack, Quaglin approached another officer. He swatted at that officer several times, and then he forcefully shoved him. Then Quaglin immediately approached another officer. They said he had his arms outstretched again. He forcefully pushed him as well. Simultaneously, backup officers started to arrive on the Capitol grounds. So they tried to get in there and assist in moving the crowd back, tried to get everybody back behind the barricades. So Quaglin was resisting the police, and then he reached out, he struck another officer. Moments later, he pushed his body into several other officers. Then he grabbed one of them by the arm, and then he struck a different officer under that officer's face mask. And when the police tried to move Quaglin back, he lunged forward, and they say he pushed against at least 2 more officers. So 2 officers ended up grabbing Quaglin. They each grabbed him by an arm, and they moved him back behind the barricades. But he immediately started to pull on the barricades, completely ignored orders to move back. Then he attacked again. I mean, this guy just would not quit. So first he swatted at an officer's hand. Then he grabbed the barricade, and then with other people in the mob, he ripped the barricade away from the police. They dragged it, and they dragged some of the officers with it into the crowd. But they dragged it away from the police. And then at the same time, Quaglin was screaming and cursing at the police. He was warning that he was going to, quote, bring a fucking cannon. So sometime after that, Quaglin was seen on video tearing down 2 sections of permanent fencing on the Capitol grounds, so destroyed permanent fencing. Then he was seen on video, he approached another police line, started pushing into another officer, and then striking at a second officer on that police line. And then he grabbed the face mask of a third officer at this new area. Quaglin then grabbed a police riot shield, stole it from the officers. He passed it back to the mob. At that point, the police line completely collapsed. So Quaglin chased after the police, and this was as they were retreating, and he was seen pushing against them. He was yelling at them. They were trying to escape, and he still wasn't done. So from there, he entered the Lower West Terrace Tunnel. He maneuvered to the front of the police line in the tunnel, and then he took part in that coordinated heave-ho push against the police. Then he assisted another member of the mob in ripping an officer's riot shield away from him. So the officer fell down because of that. And, that wasn't a easy area to fall down in. I mean, you could easily get squashed. You could easily get trampled. So Quaglin then somehow came into possession of pepper spray, and he started shooting it at the police. And then an officer tried to block it with his riot shield. So Quaglin reached around the riot shield and sprayed this officer directly in the face. They said he was temporarily blinded. He was unable to breathe. So, I mean, these people are fighting for their lives, and this guy is just out of control. Then Quaglin stole another police riot shield, and he started to use that. He was pressing his full body weight with the riot shield against the officers. Once again, Quaglin ignored repeated orders to back up. He kept thrusting his body, they said, into the police. Eventually, the police pushed the mob back to the mouth of the tunnel, and that's when Officer Michael Fanone was dragged out and tasered. So you guys all remember that. So Quaglin apparently was standing face to face with Officer Fanone when all of this was going down. Well, another member of the mob grabbed Quaglin, grabbed him by his 2 arms from the back, I believe, and threw Quaglin to the ground. So it looked like that other person was trying to protect Officer Fanone from Quaglin. So he left the Capitol grounds sometime later, started boasting about his crimes on social media, of course. And in a video he shared online, Quaglin said things like, quote, "This is our city. We own this shit. Like the fucking Capitol is ours." And Quaglin described what he was wearing, so made it very easy for the prosecutors and for the FBI. He said, quote, "I'm on a loop right now. I'm absolutely on a loop on Fox News." And he continued to brag, but then he started downplaying his actions in the days that followed. And he was telling people that he and others were only pushing against the police. And he said he, quote, "didn't hit any cops." And of course, as with all of these MAGA betas, he lied. He said, quote, "A guy died in my arm." Only one, only one arm. Anyway, so Quaglin was arrested on April 7th of 2021, and in a third superseding indictment, he was charged with 6 counts of assaulting officers, 3 of which included a dangerous weapon enhancement, 2 counts of robbery, obstructing an official proceeding, civil disorder, 2 counts of disorderly conduct, one of which also included a deadly or dangerous weapon enhancement, and 2 counts of physical violence, one of which, again, included a deadly or dangerous weapon enhancement. So Quaglin refused a plea deal. He opted for a stipulated bench trial. And in July of 2023, the judge found Quaglin guilty on all counts. So he was looking at up to 20 years in prison based on just one of these many felonies. And this time, the prosecutor requested a pretty hefty sentence. They asked for 14 years in prison, 3 years of probation, $2,000 in restitution, and an $82,000 fine, which that was the amount of money that he's raised online. The only shocking thing is that Quaglin has a limited criminal history, which is surprising. You know, some drug charges, driving under the influence. There was a simple assault charge. And then Quaglin lost his shit at his sentencing hearing. He was rambling on and on about conspiracy theories, and he told the judge, quote, "If I wanted to bring an insurrection, I would have brought a long gun." So the judge cut him off after a while, and the judge warned Quaglin that his statements were, quote, "a really bad idea." And Quaglin responded, quote, "It's a kangaroo court." So U.S. District Judge Trevor McFadden presided over Quaglin's case, and you've probably heard me insult him before. McFadden is a Trump appointee. He literally served on his transition team when he became president. But Quaglin doesn't exactly care for him either. So he told Judge McFadden, quote, "You're Trump's worst mistake of 2016. The feeling seems to be mutual. McFadden does not seem to be a fan of Quaglin either. The judge told Quaglin that his behavior was, quote, "shocking and lawless." And he said, quote, "I've sentenced a number of January 6 defendants who clearly got caught up in something they didn't anticipate, but not you. You are a menace to our society." With that, he sentenced Quaglin to 12 years in prison, 2 years of probation, and $2,000 in restitution. So look who grew a pair of ovaries. Good for you, Judge McFadden. You're a real boy. I should point out, too, Quaglin will receive credit for the time he's been in prison already. He's been in approximately 3 years, 9 more years to go. So he'll be pushing 50 when he gets out. And I don't think his apricot antichrist will be around by that time. Here's hoping. Also, the government mentioned in their sentencing memo, Quaglin's wife is now considering divorce because of his actions. So was it worth it? It's what I always ask. Was it worth it, Quaglin? And you know what he's thinking. You know he's being a smart ass and he's mouthing off to the judge because he thinks that Trump is going to win in November and he's going to get a pardon. And, you know, I'm not saying Trump doesn't have a chance of winning in November, but I can almost guarantee he will not pardon these people for his own benefit, for his own political benefit. So anyway, I will let you know when I hear more or if I hear more. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. Please like, share, and subscribe. Please donate if you can. Love you all. Take care. Talk with you soon.